Hey guys, welcome back to our very bookish channel. If you have seen some of our videos and you are returning to watch more, thank you so much. If you are new here, please click that subscribe button so that you don't miss any more of our upcoming videos. As you guys can tell, I am back in the park today. It's just a lovely day to be outside, and I really liked the fall vibes of all the mums in the background when I was editing our October TBR video. So I just thought I'd come back here to also film the September wrap-up.
Hello and welcome to our recap of what we read in September. September was a fairly successful month when it came to not just the books that I read and enjoyed, but it's kind of a running joke recently that I've been finding so many books that I've rated high, 4 and 5 star books, which I'm really hoping that I don't end up with some streak of bad books or I get into a book slump. Book slumps are not fun. I was just talking about book slumps with someone at work today, and just even thinking about it, it's just, I hate when I'm in a book slump. So some of the books that I read this month, I try and pay attention to what was on my TBR, but I am pretty chaotic when it comes to what I'm reading. I'm a little more planned when I'm doing this vlog with Amanda. I feel like the books that we're choosing for vlogs, we stay pretty much on track. We don't change our minds too often of what we are reading, so that part feels pretty planned. But beyond that, it's like anything goes because I constantly feel like I'm changing my mind as to what I'm reading. And for the TBR for this month, I definitely ended up not reading books that were on my TBR. I don't even know if I read a single one that was on my September TBR other than what we planned for. So, and first I can go over that, which is we did a Frida McFadden vlog. Amanda can tag and you guys can watch if you haven't seen that one. For more in depth, but this is one of the reasons why I ended up reading 7 books this month. I typically only get I've been as low as 3 books, which was my June, and probably 6 has been the max that I have read in a month, just because of how much time I spend with work and then everything else. So Frida's books end up taking me like 2 days, 3 max. And so these 3 went really quick at the beginning of the month for our vlog. So that's why I ended up with 7 this month. I had started to watch a vlog from another YouTube book reviewer, and I'm pretty sure she said she read 27 books this month. And I just boggles my mind. And it's probably someone whose job YouTube channel they're on, but it's just because of how much I have to work and other things in my life, I just, unless I was speed reading or skipping chapters or have audio, I saw somewhere that people who do audiobooks actually have it on like a 2 or 3 times speed. And I can't even imagine trying to enjoy a book that way. So I try not to think about the number because I want to enjoy what I'm reading. It's not about like, oh, I read 30 books this month. I mean, I don't know what the point of that is if you're not enjoying what you're reading.
The first set of books I'm going to talk about that I read, Jen and I did a reading vlog on, and they are the Frida McFadden books. The Coworker, which is her newest release, Do Not Disturb, and I read The X on my tablet. So I'm not going to go into these. We did a very long, in-depth reading vlog video for these books, so if you are interested in hearing about these books and what we thought of them, just go check out our reading vlog. I will post it in the description below.
So the other book that was part of a vlog is my 5-star read potential. To watch the video to see if I actually rated this 5 stars. But that's all I'll say about that. and that was part of, we had this wrapped, and I unveiled that in our 5-star read. We are, I think, going to be posting very shortly before this vlog.
The next book I read that I want to talk about, I also have already posted a video on, and it is Mother-Daughter Murder Night by Nina Simon. This is a debut release from this author. It is just a general, well-done whodunit mystery. I thoroughly enjoyed myself reading this book. It is a highly recommended book. If you missed my ARC review for this book, then please, I'll link it up here, or you can find the link to the video in the description below.
So I had 3 other books that I read that wasn't part of a vlog. First one was at the beginning of the month, and I read it with the Frida books, which was really funny because I felt like it fit in really well with it. And I'm sure this one isn't necessarily known. She's actually local to Dayton, Ohio, and her name's Erin Flanagan. This is the first book I read by her. She won the Edgar Award for Deer Season, and I didn't read that one. It did sound really good, but I ended up reading this one because it's new. She was at a local Barnes & Noble signing, and this is a psychological thriller. It was a 4-star read, of course. And so this one is about, and I know this premise has been in other books. I don't necessarily, one's not coming to mind that I have read before, but it's about a woman who, newly widowed, her husband dies fairly young, and she ends up moving back to Dayton, Ohio. Once she comes back, she hadn't worked in a while. She kind of helped with her husband's business, and her husband had his own tech company or something like that with a friend of his, and she kind of helped her husband with this company. Her husband ended up leaving a lot of debt, and so she doesn't have a lot of money. She's intending to move in with her mom in Dayton, Ohio, and she reaches out to a woman that she knew back in her college days that she had done a job with. It was like an internship or something like that. So she reaches out to her on the off chance that she has a lead on a job. And that's when I was reading this book, I actually had double checked. I wasn't reading a thriller. It was almost reading just fiction. And I'm so used to, especially since I read this right after Frida, I'm so used to more twists, but I don't know. It just faster paced, I guess, is what I would say. And this was a little bit more of a slow build up. And once I got towards the second half of the book, I kind of saw why, because it's tension building. And I kept thinking what's going on? Because you don't really see anything wrong per se. She ends up talking to this woman, becoming friends with her, and this woman just ingratiates herself so much into this other woman's life that she becomes very uncomfortable and doesn't want to be that close. Because this woman ends up signing a lease on a place to rent, convincing her not to stay with her mom. And she helps get to her job. It's the same place where she works. She kind of lies for this woman on her resume. And it reminded me a lot of the movie with, it was from the 90s, I think. And Rebecca De Mornay was a nanny. And she kind of did that with this family where she really ingratiates herself, and it was a horror almost, because obviously she was up to no good. And I think it might have been called The Nanny. I actually don't remember. I have to look that up. So the second half of this book, things just start happening left and right, and everything comes out in the open, and you end up seeing things that didn't make complete sense in the beginning. You're getting parts of the story and you find out later why. So I did really love this book. It was really good. And I had originally told Amanda we should do like a local author, one that's not really well known, and just give someone shout out from, like, we're both in Ohio, so like Ohio readers. And I don't know if we're necessarily gonna do that. This book just made me think we should do that in the future, because there are a lot of Ohio readers. I mean, there are a lot of Ohio writers, and it would be nice just to do a vlog devoted to a couple books that we read by Ohio writers. It might be something that gets pushed into January, because we have a lot planned for the rest of this year.
Another book that I read in the month of September is also an ARC called Secrets Never Die. This is a YA mystery / thriller book, and I thought this book was okay. I'm beginning to feel like I'm not really as interested in the YA books anymore as I used to be, so I was not the target audience for this book, but it was okay. It kind of gave me the same feeling that God, what was the name of that book? Reminded me of another murder mystery YA book that I read, but it wasn't quite as good as that one. But I also had an unpopular opinion about that book that I didn't really enjoy very well either. But if you are into YA thrillers, I think this one is very comparable to some of the other ones that I've read. It's just they're not really books that I'm enjoying at the moment, and they're just not really fitting what my mood is right now. But I will say this was a pretty decent read. It was very fast-paced, so if you like fast-paced YA thrillers, then I suggest you check this out.
Another one that, and I almost picked this for the potential 5-star read. This was what I originally was starting to plan on, and then I just thought it was too obvious, in my opinion, and it was almost like I was cheating, saying like, oh, I'm picking this one, because Taylor Jenkins Reid, I read and loved 2 of her books prior to this, which is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones. And what's funny is I end up not liking this one as much. I still liked it. It just wasn't to the level that I had loved those other 2 books. And I think the reason might be, in this book, she really starts throwing a lot of characters into this book. It follows just one night about 4 siblings that throw like this crazy party once a year, but this party is this particular one. It's in 1984, I think, set in 1984, is just particularly bigger than any of the previous parties. And these 4 siblings are kind of famous for a couple reasons. They are kids of I felt like it was a Mick Jagger type character. It was a musician that was like hugely famous, and it just sounded like it was like a Mick Jagger reference, the way they described him. And you start to see a bunch of things that you get stories of their parents as they met, which I really love that part. But the parts I didn't like were at the party. And they keep throwing in both real life celebrities and fake celebrities, like fictional celebrities. And I didn't really see the reason why. I was trying to figure out like exactly why, and I thought they were somehow going to end up fitting in, and maybe it was just for the picture of what was going on at this party, so you know who was at this party. I don't know, but I wasn't really loving that part, and it started to get where I was like pushing myself through those parts of the book. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't think this was a 5. So if I had picked this one, it would not have ended up as a 5-star book. And so, yeah, that's I don't even know if I said the name of this book. It's Malibu Rising. And I do still want to read the Carrie Soto book, and Carrie Soto is also a character in this book. So I believe 4 of those books are connected. They have characters that intermix, but I don't know if I have figured out all those because I haven't read them together and my memory isn't that good. So I still love Taylor Jenkins Reid, but this one just wasn't my favorite of hers.
The next book I read is also an ARC, and Jen gifted this to me for my birthday, and it's Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. And I did read Luckiest Girl Alive by her, and I enjoyed that book. As far as I can remember, I read that book a long time ago, but I actually had to DNF this book for now. It's not like a hard DNF where I'm like just so not enjoying myself, I don't want to pick it back up, but I've kind of felt like the beginning of the book is kind of slow, and that's just really not the type of book that I like to read. I don't really like slow burns or sort of books that kind of drag on. I like very fast-paced and gripping novels that just keep me entertained the whole time, and so this book's kind of given me that feeling. Although it is interesting to me, I just wanted to stop reading it for now. I might pick it back up and read it a little bit more maybe as time goes on, but for right now I am DNFing this book. I did read it all the way to page 77, so I got, maybe like a fourth of the way into the book, which isn't very far, but again, it just was kind of dragging to me, so I had to put it down.
And lastly, I ended September, and I really wanted to read September House. I still want to read it, and I have it on my October TBR, so I'm really hoping, yeah, it's right there. I'm really hoping that I get a chance to read that one by the end of October. But instead, I ended up picking this one up. I was craving just some literature fiction. I felt I had very heavy mystery and like psychological mystery books, thrillers. The Taylor Jenkins Reid was fiction, but it just felt I don't know, contemporary fiction. And I was craving just something that was on the level of Anthony Doerr, which I completely love, Cloud Cuckoo Land. And I had seen a couple really good reviews on this one, and the premise of it spoke to me. And this book is kind of it's in the future. You don't know how far into the future, but I believe it's supposed to be not that far into the future. There's an environmental crisis, I guess I would call it, that a smog has taken over the world and has changed how everyone has to eat, because a lot of what people have relied on for food is now extinct, given that the smog is like blocking out sunlight, and they're pretty much relying on food that is almost like a science experiment. They have to create their own food. And this woman, she's a chef, she's the main character of this book. You get a lot, like bits of her story before, but then the main part of the story is when she decides to take a job, and it's near Italy, and it's at the top of this mountain. And it says a lot about class, because the top of this mountain is somehow they have all the food. They have been able to recreate food that hasn't been around for a while. One of which is honey, the other is milk. And there's a lot of metaphors that go into what it's saying about, because only really rich people are able to be at the top of this mountain. The second half of this book was just, in my opinion, very amazing. And the way she writes, very poetic, in the way she chooses her words and how she describes food. This book was very much, the themes are pleasure, food, sex, and the dangers of creating things once they're gone. And I really enjoyed the writing. It took me a while in the beginning to like adapt back to literature, because I have read so much that was written differently. It was like I feel like I've mostly read books that were more for mass consumption, and this one was just so different in how it's written. The only word I can really think about is poetic. It's just a different, I haven't read anything like this before. So I ended up loving this book, and especially the second half of it. I feel like it's harder to talk about this type of book because I haven't read as much literature fiction in a while. I tend to have read more psychological thrillers and more contemporary fiction, and I feel sometimes I don't have the right language to describe the book. Like, I'm not doing it justice, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And I really did enjoy this book, and it made me want to read more literature fiction, to be honest. I have much on my plate anytime soon, but when I had been looking for this book and I saw a lot of fiction that I really want to read, it's just those books tend to take me longer to read and really enjoy. This one wasn't as long. I feel like sometimes then I don't have as much time to read other things I want to read, if that makes sense. So I think that's why I fall into reading the things that don't take me as long. But I do want to take time to, there's a couple books I really want to read and just take the time to do it. And I just need to do it. I don't know if this time of year is the best time, because this is a busy time of year for me at work. And I don't feel like I have, I get so exhausted from working so much. And it's just, I don't have the mental capacity to enjoy that type of literature. It has to be, I think, my slower months, which are January, February, March, are those months that I should really pay attention more to literature fiction. So those are the books I got to read for September.
The next book I read is one of my favorite books of the entire month, and it is, I would say, a YA fantasy or a YA romance. YA romantasy, I think, is technically what it's called, and it is Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. And this book was so cute and very entertaining, and I'm not really a big fan of the trope. Okay, I'm back. I had to move because where I was filming, it was next to a big picnic area, and all of these little kids came up to eat their lunch at the picnic area, and they're very cute but very loud. So I don't know if they're on a field trip or if they walked over from a school next door or something, but there was no way you'd be able to hear me over all the kids talking and enjoying their lunch. And I just have 2 more books here to get through. So as I was saying, I'm not a really big fan of the novels where the two obviously like each other, but they just keep finding excuses to not tell the other person how they feel, and it's so aggravating for me. But this book was just so entertaining, and there was so much more going on that it was fun. It was kind of funny in some parts, and there's a lot of action in some parts, and I just loved the setting of this book. So there is going to be 2 more books in this series coming out. I already have them on my TBR. I cannot wait to get my hands on the second book in the series to continue this story. But you are following a villain and his assistant, and his assistant is just a woman that's kind of down on her luck. She keeps having a hard time finding a job, and she has a family to support, and she by accident stumbles upon this villain, and in a kind of sticky situation, he looks out for her a little bit, and he starts seeing something in her. I think he's intrigued by her from the beginning, and he offers her a job to be his assistant, which she takes. And go on this journey with them. There's obviously the king who is trying to hunt down this villain and destroy the villain, and the villain is seemingly making all of this ruckus and harming the king's village. So we've got those two enemies kind of going after each other, and then the assistant is trying to work with the villain to keep his business going, his business of villainy, and to protect him from the king. So it's just a really interesting story. It's a very fun, and I would recommend this really for anybody. It's just a great story, and there's not, you know, it's YA. There's really no spice or anything. You don't have to worry about that, and there's not like any extremely gory parts or anything. So it's just an all-around good story and a very gripping read. This last book I'm just going to briefly talk about because Jen and I are doing a reading vlog on this book, and this was a book that I thought could potentially be a 5-star read for me, and that is Hidden Pictures by Jason Ruac. This book, like I said, I'm not going to go into it too much because we're doing a whole vlog on it, but I thoroughly enjoyed this book. The twist in this book was different than any book that I had read before, and it was very unique, and I loved all the pictures. It went by really quickly because a lot of the pages are just big pictures, which I enjoyed looking at throughout the book, and all around solid read. Was it 5 stars? You'll have to check out my reading vlog to find out.
Let us know your thoughts on any of these. If you happen to read any of these, loved these, or hated these, any opinions or anything that makes you think we should read something next. I would love suggestions. So we're about to dig into our October TBRs, or potentially books that aren't even on those to read, and we'll let you know our thoughts at the end of the month. Till next time.